Wait, Cliff, is that you?
No, believe it or not, but I'm not what somebody would call especially popular. People recognizing me in-game isn't something that happens often, so whenever it does, it tends to become a bit of a highlight. I mean, some of you might think that me having 60 nice thousand subscribers means I get recognized all the time, but that isn't actually the case. In the grand scheme of things, I'm a small fish just kinda doing my own thing. Barely anyone in the space has ever heard my name, so trust me when I say that it really is a special thing to happen for me. More than anything, this match of Overwatch felt like all the stars aligned for me to make an episode about it. Me playing my main role in competitive play, Jeff blessing me with the beautiful sight of King's Row, a viewer of mine on my team, and to top it all off, two teams that were determined to take home the victory in one of the most balanced displays of matchmaking functionality I've ever seen. That's right, my friends, this is one of those once-in-a-blue-moon games where the matchmaker actually did its job. The only thing that can make this even better is if today's episode was sponsored by Chore. Because it is. Chore is a new online platform that lets you create and play PC games for the low price of nothing. Powered by the might of the Unreal Engine, Chore offers an accessible game construction kit that allows you to create and instantly share your games with the world. And while you don't need any coding or art experience, there is opt-in complexity that allows you to make use of it if you are already a veteran. But if you're more into playing games than making them, Chore has a vast selection of games and prototypes made by people like you and me. It's like the combined creativity of the internet in the palm of your hand, waiting for you to try them out. Playing games on Chore reminded me a lot of my early days on the internet, where I would be playing prototype games like this on a daily because I didn't have any money to buy the next big AAA game. As a longtime FPS player, of course, I immediately beelined my way into their most popular FPS game, Strike Team, which they are actually running a tournament for. This is a call to action for all of you Widowmaker mains out there. Is your aim good enough to get to the top of the leaderboards and earn yourself a slice of the $6,000 prize pool? If you think you got what it takes, then join the Guns and Glory tournament running from Thursday, March 18th to Thursday, March 25th. So what are you waiting for? Enter and play for free by following my link in the description below. Thanks again to Chore for sponsoring today's video, and now, onto our standard programming. Now, if it feels to you like I'm always doing my placement matches, that's because I kind of am. I had a bunch of technical issues that stopped me from playing the last month and a half, and between 3 roles on 3 different accounts, there's just a lot of placements for me to get through. It's not like I'm complaining though, placement matches are arguably the most exciting part of any ranked season, so here we are finding our place on the ladder once more. And that place, at least on the time being, was anywhere behind my tanks. My Reinhardt opted for the standard play of opening the game up by fire striking the enemy spawn doors. Said enemies were not very appreciative of that and decided to rush towards the objective with a ferocity that I haven't experienced in a while. But much to my surprise, the fight was over almost as swiftly as it started. Frankly speaking, I don't even know what happened. I just kinda backed off to stay alive, and suddenly, the enemies were gone. A team that plays so aggressively wouldn't be outdone by a single failed attempt, and upon respawning, Megumi put the Hanzo differential on display, which meant go time for the rest of the attackers. With the speed boost accelerating their advance, the red team immediately got in position on the objective, and once the Baptiste dropped their widescreen TV, there already wasn't much more we could do. Amplification Matrix is one of the most reliable zoning tools in the game, and no matter how we would try to go about recontesting, we'd be taking a fistful of damage in the process, and in this case, our retaliation paled by comparison. Alright, fine, so it didn't take long for us to lose the first point, but that's okay, there's plenty of distance to cover before the red team can claim victory and ample opportunities for us to recover. Thankfully, none of our low mobility characters were caught on bad spawn, which meant we could attempt to contest the objective rather sooner than later, but in order to achieve that, we needed an opening, one that I'll be glad to provide by deleting the enemy Reinhardt with a volley. I was honestly surprised to find the red team back out so willingly as my tanks marched onto the objective, especially considering the level of aggression they put on display so far. But that should teach us that there's a difference between playing aggressively and playing recklessly, because the attackers were painfully aware of the fact that losing their main tank was reason to back out. As much as I was hoping to catch a break from the red team's relentless attacks, if there was one thing I had to give them credit for, it was the fact that they didn't lose any time. They came back faster than you could type easy in chat, and once more attempted to crush us by using Amplification Matrix. But Rashid's deflect would turn their plan against them, which immediately opened up the opportunity for us to strike back. Our team fearlessly rushed past the Matrix to make use of our advantage, and before we knew it, we found ourselves in front of the spawn doors. As for me, I've been playing very defensively this entire round. While I am known for my overly aggressive support play, I felt like I was losing half my HP every time I turned a corner, and you can tell that this has impacted my play in a very negative way. Things were about to get much worse for me because the red team's repeated failure to win fights without ultimates prompted them to simply dump all of them into a single team fight, the resulting damage of which grossly overpowered the healing output that my Transcendence could provide. It was hunting season now, and apparently support players are high up on the menu, though none of us managed to get away thanks not only to an overwhelming amount of damage but also a speed boost that helped them pick off the survivors. At this point in the game, something of a pattern had definitely emerged. The red team wasn't just aimlessly holding down the W key, because as far as individual matchups are concerned, we have the upper hand. But as we all know, ultimates can solve that problem. Two can play at that game, however, so when our team respawned, we decided to show them who's boss with an almighty "Know You times infinity" that was bound to put them in their place. And after that proud display of color vomit all over our screens, the only one that remained was blue. You might have noticed that I swapped off Zenyatta by then, and that for a number of reasons. Seeing the red team's reliance on ultimates made one thing very apparent: the fact that Transcendence was not going to save us. And to top it all off, I was constantly eating so much damage that I could rarely use my Discord to lead the team fight. It was obvious that I still haven't devised a good counter strategy beyond I should get off Zenyatta, but Bayonet is one of the most powerful cooldowns in the game, so at least there's that. But while I was busy trying to come up with a plan of attack, our DPS decided to overextend to Heck and beyond, which, as you can probably guess, made our previous investment of ultimates absolutely null and void. Our Zarya was trying to save herself and her charge after realizing that the second point was gone, but that doesn't mean they weren't ready to dish out some damage. If we want to avoid the stagger trend to spawn room city, we'd have to break the attacker's momentum before it's too late, and Poker was here to deliver. By the time our Reinhardt respawned, we had already done some serious damage to the red team, once again proving that, usually anyway, we'd be the ones coming out ahead in teamfights that don't involve the stacking of ultimates. We had thoroughly pushed the enemies back into their spawn once more, but this time things are going to be different, because we had finally devised a strategy to deal with their ultimate heavy playstyle. And that plan was to use even more ultimates. Okay, truth be told, the red team had one, maybe two different ways that they approached every single engagement, neither of which was particularly intricate. The whole idea we had was forcing them to commit to fights they'd rather back out of. So as soon as they invested in ultimate, we hit them with an early Uno reverse card to trigger them into wanting to back out, but of course it was already too late by then. Long story short is that the red team had become predictable. They were telegraphing their intent by always engaging us in the exact same way, which allowed us to strike back without giving them an opportunity to back out. Of course, knowing what's gonna happen is good and all, but none of that matters when your reaction does not prevent it. As much as we knew that the enemies were going to stack ultimates on us, our positioning was off, which allowed their Hanzo to cut our team in half by using Dragon Strike. Our prime directive was saving whoever survived our misplay, because Jeff knows if we're to get wiped right now, there's no way we can come back for a promising attempt of recontesting. My Zarya went as far as investing a Graviton Surge just to keep the red team from chasing us down, which definitely saved my life. When our Reinhardt returned to the front line, I figured we were in a reasonably stable position. However, my Zarya was yelling at me to nano him, which as a German, I'm very inclined to listen to. Ninja predictably couldn't do anything with the nano I gave him, as every single enemy player in sight simply walked away from it, and I can only imagine how frustrating that must have been for him. At this point, stalling the fight out into overtime was realistically our best bet. I did everything in my power to stabilize us, including landing a sleep dart on their flanking Hanzo, which Rashid had unfortunately woken up immediately. But there was no time to complain about it, because tensions were high and the next clash between our tanks could occur at any moment, putting me on edge. The seconds continued to tick down until eventually overtime finally triggered, which meant even if we don't hold this last point, we're still in a strong position as far as this match is concerned. The red team forced us into a corner with another amplification matrix, and it was in that moment that I became the victim of a shatter. You see, the thing with Reinhardt's ultimate is that even if you just take a single step forward, the stun effect is going to project momentum onto your character, which flings you in the direction you last moved. That put me in prime position to get eliminated, which in turn removed most of our survivability. It was an unfortunate, albeit avoidable way of losing our defense round. Dragging it into overtime was a bit of a saving grace, but of course, we wouldn't be satisfied with anything less than victory. Competitive matches that go back and forth as much as this one don't happen very often to me, but it was a welcome break from all the smurfs that I had to deal with up until that point. It is also worth mentioning that we are already halfway through this episode without me covering what is in the title, and that's because I was rather quiet in voice chat throughout our defense. My teammates were plenty talkative, but I didn't record most of it because they didn't say anything funny I could milk for content. So yeah, just YouTuber things, I guess. Point being, I was ready to support diff the red team into oblivion, which included a more active role in voice chat. But for for how much I claimed that they were getting predictable, I sure as heck was not expecting them to make a swap to Doomfist, much less having them divert from their usual flankless playstyle. The ironic part is that you can see this brief moment of hesitation in my gameplay where I could clearly hear somebody sneaking about, but I literally thought to myself, oh, how bad can it be? Well, I'll tell you how bad it could be, because my callousness resulted in me deservingly getting one shot out of nowhere. And as much as I appreciated Mercy's effort of bringing me back into the game via means of resurrection, it was one of those reses that I really wish I could deny, because there was no way I was getting out in one piece. My team decided to continue their assault despite the fact that they lost their main healer twice, and I was immediately worried about us kicking off our offense with a massive ultimate bank disadvantage as a result of their decision. As a matter of fact, we never quite disengaged no matter how many players we lost. I mean, the spawn advantage was on our side, but it was a stark contrast from the clean engagement playstyle that the red team put on display. We certainly made an effort to get creative with our ultimates and positioning, but so far, the enemies definitely had the upper hand. Though it seemed like us refusing to disengage was really testing the red team's trigger finger, and at some point they couldn't resist pushing into us, which finally gave us an opening pick. We still did not completely regroup, but what we were lacking in numbers, we more than made up for with our sheer tenacity, as every elimination we obtained became increasingly more valuable. My teammates must have been absolutely sick and tired of being on the losing side of this match, causing them to, seemingly out of nowhere, smash down on the W key like there was no tomorrow. That recklessness that I initially thought the enemy team featured was now undeniably on our side, and somehow magically it worked out in our favor. Of course, somebody had to stay behind to capture the point, because that's kind of important in this game. As it turns out, yep, very important. While I was making sure that we don't lose by default, the rest of my team had evidently thrown caution out the window as they continued to chase down the fleeing defenders with reckless abandon. The red team was very unfortunate to have gotten split spawn due to there only being one person who very slowly captured the objective, resulting in them inevitably getting staggered. I guess I can use this objective intermission to remind you to like and subscribe. Oh, also, if you're disappointed to see me have swapped off Ana, make sure you hit that bell icon, because next week I'm gonna be one-tricking Ana into a dive comp. You won't want to miss it. By the time the payload connected with my teammates in the front line, the next special effects cluster was already well overdue, and I could finally put on display why I made the switch to Baptiste. Essentially, we were already outplaying the red team during dry pushes most of the time, so by me swapping to Bap, I could give us a huge edge in surviving and countering the one thing they did really well, which was using ultimates. The red team was getting far fewer attempts at stopping the payload than we did on our defense, because we refused to let any of them back out. Without the ability to regroup into clean engagements, it was obvious they began to struggle. Though some of us may have gotten a bit overzealous and once again pushed in front of our tanks to inevitably become another statistic. For how much distance we covered in one fell swoop, it really appeared as though we were finally running out of gas. The red team's speed boost allowed them to build on their opening pick and chase us down, finally resetting the game in their favor. Is what I would say if my Zarya didn't refuse to let that happen once again. Despite Poco putting himself in lethal danger, he kept the teamfight alive and even used his Graviton Surge to make sure that a clean reset does not happen. In spite of the red team having every advantage on their side, our sheer ferocity managed to push them back, as they somehow ended up respecting the fact that we continued to bark at them without any bite to back it up. But alas, the enemies were still in control. Their movement was very deliberate and was apparent that they had some sort of game plan at the ready, which meant if I wanted to give my frontline the edge, I'd have to force the enemies to start making uncomfortable decisions. And that decision came in the form of an amplification matrix placed right in their face. The enemy Reinhardt felt he had no choice but to safeguard my ultimate, despite most of us not even being in position where we could make use of it, which definitely played into my cards. But their Reinhardt was not the only one who had to make uncomfortable decisions. When pitted with a choice between one-shotting a dead-eyeing McCree and keeping our Zarya alive, he decided that getting rid of the gunslinger had priority. In this case, the result justifies the means, because not only did it get the remaining defenders to completely back out, allowing Ninja and me to escort the objective, but our Mercy undid that elimination as well. I was all about the way our offense was going. We finally had a response to right about every play the enemies decided to throw at us, and we immediately answered in kind with a play of our own to maintain our position at the top. Everything that could potentially go wrong for the red team was officially going wrong, and let me just say that I'm very glad not to be in their voice chat right now. Speaking of which, our own voice chat had actually gotten really quiet ever since halfway through the second point. It felt like we were mostly running on instinct and only a few of our plays were deliberately coordinated anymore. It's hard to say if this is a good or a bad thing, but following our stellar performance during this offense, I figured it wouldn't hurt to discuss our game plan for the final round. We should try to play for window, right? Just like, be careful, let me get my ultimate up, and then we rush hard. If we feed too hard, they're just gonna roll us with ultimates again. Because that's the only way they win is with ultimates, this entire game.
Wait, Cliff, is that you?
Excuse me, it might be.
Holy man, I enjoy your content.
Hey, thanks man.
I've seen you in my higher games too, so kind of fun to meet you in game right now.
Alright, let's win this. For YouTube. Accompanied by the lovely sound of Rashid's keyboard ASMR, I promised him that I would turn this game into an episode if we are to win. And well, what can I say? Winning, we did. The red team's morale went to rock bottom once we not only figured out their playstyle, but also found a way to play against it. Their lack of adaptability would ultimately be their downfall as we comfortably walked half of our team onto the objective, while the rest of us was dismantling their lineup from behind. I really could have done without the enemy team flaming one another in general chat towards the end, but this match really was one of the more fun ones I had coming back, and now you also know why I made this an episode and why it is titled the way it is. Hey, let's go, guys.
I told you.
Good job.
Easy. Bro, you get a main tank on DPS and that's how you win games easy.
I've been very fortunate to where most of my run-ins with viewers of mine have actually been really pleasant, not only because they were being nice, but also because they're really good players. And it is worth mentioning that, personally, I cringe at the idea of calling my audience fans, and the only reason I still refer to them as such is because as a search tag, it does better in the algorithm. I don't know, it just feels presumptuous to suggest that only because somebody occasionally watches my content, they'd immediately be considering themselves a fan, especially for a small nobody like myself. Either way, whether you call yourself a fan or just a casual viewer, I appreciate you guys all the same for watching my videos and just being generally awesome in the comments and in-game whenever I meet you. I don't have the most outgoing personality and I rarely read the text chat in-game, so if I ever miss a comment of yours in Overwatch, I'm really sorry about that. At any rate, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, do let me know by dropping me a like on your way out, consider subscribing if you want to see more, and definitely hit that bell icon to not miss out on my next upload. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and until next time, peace!